To everyone. Thank you so much for joining this evening. I'm really, really excited. This is the results of some really amazing work that's happened over the last couple of years for us to be able to get started on a really important process that involves all of our work. And so tonight we are really excited because I think we have probably a majority of the folks that had signed up to join this, but we also know that there's some folks that are still getting settled and not going to be able to participate this evening. But I just want to introduce myself. My name is Poncho Guevara, and I am the executive director of Sacred Heart Community Service. And I will be your kind of your MC this evening. I'll explain a little bit more about the context in a minute. But but again, I just wanted to start. If anyone needs Spanish interpretation, please push on the button si necesitas interpretación. Ahí en español tenemos interpretación ahí en español. Si puedes empujar el botón del globito y empujar español, lo tenemos esta noche. So to get us started, I'm going to let me see, hopefully we will. Let's see if I can actually do this correctly. This is all part of the fun of getting a meeting started, but we're going to hop right into a conversation around, let's see. All right, I'm going to get us moving in just a second, but I'm going to start sharing screen and hopefully folks will be able to see. Can everyone see the screen right now? We're good? Good. Thumbs up, a couple folks. All right. So what we're going to be doing tonight is going over a number of different topics, and I think I sent out the agenda. There's also an official agenda on the website, and so on the city's website, and we're going to be getting moving on this. But before I do so, I'm just going to start setting up some. I'm going to be setting up some breakout groups. So we're going to actually do a little activity in a second. And thank you for everyone for joining, both the advisory committee members and other public participants. So here's going to be our agenda for this evening. First off, we're going to do a call to order. We're going to do some connection time. We're going to have a testimony. We're going to have a little bit of a presentation about proposed process. And we're going to have a little bit of a learning conversation about learnings from other cities that have actually done reimagining processes. We're going to talk a little about committees and have a dialogue around committee formation. And then we're going to have some public comment and a closing and follow-up. So with that, before we get started, I just wanted to, make sure that we did a land acknowledgement. So I put this in the agenda, but I just want to recognize that we respectfully acknowledge that we host this meeting on the lands of the Muwekma Ohlone people who have stewarded this land through generations. We commit ourselves to partner with our Indigenous sisters and brothers to celebrate and honor their legacy in our collective work for justice and our care for these lands that we benefit from today. It is this legacy that we stand upon, and we have to be very conscious of how we approach our work and be respectful of that legacy of injustice that continues to exist to this day. And I want to make sure that we do so as we begin this process. So with that, we're gonna actually start out with a little bit of a breakout conversation, and I'm gonna ask people to actually join one of these rooms as people are joining the process. And here's the question that I want to have for folks. We're not going to take a while this evening to have everyone on the call actually introduce themselves, but we're going to do that in small groups. So with that, I'm gonna, let's see, we're gonna do this right now. So I'm gonna ask people to actually join one of the breakout groups, and if you could answer the question, these questions: your name, affiliation, and who are your people. And you can interpret that however you want to, but what constituencies are you representing? Like in this group tonight, but also in different places and spaces in your life. So I'm not separating people based on if you're a member of the public or you're a member of the committee. These are all mixed groups, so please feel free to introduce yourselves. So with that, I'm going to open up rooms and we will return in 10 minutes. So manage your time wisely. Good evening, Will. How are you? We are in breakout rooms for the next few minutes, and we've asked people to share their name, affiliation, and who they are representing. So I think, Aaron, I think you're on the phone. Say, well, I'll introduce myself. Let's see. So we'll pick up whoever hops into the call in just a minute. So I'll introduce myself again. My name is Poncho Guevara. I'm the executive director of Sacred Heart Community Service, and I am, I'm representing Sacred Heart. In this case, I am representing the 50,000 folks that come and receive services and organize with us at Sacred Heart, primarily low income, working poor, mostly immigrant, mostly people of color that are part of this process, and also representing a couple of important committees that we have, which is the work that we're doing around immigrant rights, tenant rights, affordable housing issues, and there's a direct representation from the Reimagining Community Safety, our Race Equity and Community Safety Committee of Sacred Heart. So they're on here too, but I'm involved in supporting that work. And I also represent the Race Equity Action Leadership Coalition. So, Will?
Hey, my name is Will Armeline. I'm the director of the San Jose State University Human Rights Institute, and I fill an advisory seat on this body, on RIPS. Again, sort of representing the Institute on behalf of our core team and working group. So our job will be to inform the body as best we can with scholarship and data and explanation and access to those kinds of things. And I'll be serving at the behest of the group.
Thanks, Will. I don't know if Aaron or Yuridia, if you're actually on the line, if you want to share a little bit about who are you. Oh, Yuridia had hopped off and hopped back on. So Aaron, are you on the line? Guess not. So well, welcome this evening. We are being recorded, so we will wait for the rest of you to return. Hello, Kimmy. Welcome this evening. And Adriana, welcome. We are just, we are in some breakout groups right now where people are talking about who name affiliation and who they represent. So if either of you would like to share, you're welcome to do so.
I thought we were just observers, Poncho.
Oh, I think we should be inclusive. I think it's really important to be inclusive in this process.
Wow, you are really disrupting the system. I'm actually gonna step away. I just came out of another meeting, so I'm gonna step away, grab something, and come back. What time are you gonna reconvene?
In 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Matt. Welcome.
Hi, I thought this was a webinar situation. I didn't know I was.
We're doing straight up. We're doing straight up Zoom meeting.
All right. I came to observe.
Excellent. Good evening, Latoya. Welcome. We are in some breakout groups as people are introducing themselves. Welcome back, everyone. So we're gonna continue with our agenda. Thank you so much for being able to take some time to get to know each other, and we will continue to do this kind of work to connect in future sessions as well. Si necesitas interpretación en español, puedes imprimir el globito que está abajo de la pantalla y tenemos este tipo de interpretación si lo necesitas. Okay. So we're going to hop back on. So I wanted to introduce Andrew Rodriguez, who's going to start us off with the testimony this evening.
Hello.
Hello.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right. Yeah. Hello, everybody. Yeah, my name's Andrew Rodriguez. Here with Sacred Heart. I've been involved with Sacred Heart Rex organization since March, and so I just wanted to share a little story with you. Well, first, let me tell you, I'm born and raised in San Jose. I've been around, all areas of the city. I've dealt with the police. I've had a lot of police interaction my whole life, but through all of it, I've been lucky enough to stay out of trouble, and for the most part, kept a clean record. So just wanted to share with you one story that I think could help. So I actually have it written out. So let me just pull it up, and then I'm just going to read it. Bear with me. I'll be reading the story. Hopefully you can follow along here. So I was thinking about a time recently when police stopped me. It was around midnight, and I was riding my bike downtown on Santa Clara Street. I was by myself, and we're talking about a bicycle, a little 24-inch BMX looking bicycle. Anyways, I was on my way to meet up with some friends. They had started their trip about an hour before me, and I was running a little late, so I was just playing catch up. And there was very little outdoor activity going on at this time. It was during the pandemic, so there was hardly any cars out on the street. There was hardly any foot traffic. The street was empty. So I was riding along, and apparently my front light burned out, which was my bright white light. And although I have like a whole bunch of lights on my bike, it's pretty decked out with like lights, just, it's just for fun, A police cruiser passed me up on my left side, and because I was riding on the right side, I'm in the street, but I was on the right side of the road. And I noticed that they turned around and they came back and stopped me. And initially, they just stayed in their cruiser and expected me to go speak to them out onto the street. But I immediately distanced myself by moving my bike and walked onto the sidewalk. I walked away, and the passenger officer opened the door with intent. That I think that made him a little irritated. So he approached me, and all this initial reaction was within the first 10 seconds of dialogue. So I'll cut to the chase and explain what's on my mind. So I'm clean. Like I said, I have no felonies on my record. They ran my information. They found that I have no outstanding warrants, nothing for them to complain about. They just wanted to chit chat after a while. They started asking me questions. So I said, all you guys needed was the silliest infraction, which is me not having a bright enough light on for oncoming traffic to see, even though I'm riding on the right side of the road. And that was enough to get into my personal life and, have me hung up here for the last 10 minutes. You're, asking me all kinds of questions, and you're waiting to hear back from whoever it is you're talking to on your radio for them to say, yeah, he's clean. And so that's all that was for what? And they said, yeah, well, we can do that because you didn't have a light. And I said, well, why do you do that? I said, you're just patrolling around to maybe find out if somebody is a wanted criminal. And they said, well, it's possible, but we're also making sure you're up to date on all your court proceedings and stuff. You'd be surprised how much people we catch who have outstanding warrants, and they just need to go and deal with that stuff. And so that right there is what triggered me, because I'm one of those guys who has had warrants in the past for like tedious, unimportant stuff that I didn't deal with because I'm just trying to take care of things one day at a time. But that doesn't make me a criminal or a danger to society or even someone worthy of the cops' 2 to 4 hours of salary for that day. So people who didn't follow up with their court dates inevitably get warrants placed on them, so that every time they get faced with the police, they have to instantly decide in their minds, everything, everything I was supposed to do today in the next following days or weeks will have to just wait until I get back because I'm going to jail right now. Or they think to themselves, I can't go to jail because I have people that depend on me and I made promises to be there. So they're probably thinking, that court stuff I got to deal with next month. That's just going to have to wait. And I'm not going to jail today and I'm running. So those kinds of things people are having to, process at any given moment when they're getting stopped by the police. Anyhow, so sorry. But okay, yeah. So, but remove the police from the scenario, and that same dude who has warrants and court stuff, he's going on about his day, causing no harm to anybody. And maybe he forgot to use a blinker, or maybe his air freshener hanging from his mirror is a distraction, but he's not a criminal or a suspect. Add the police to the scene. That air freshener is all it took to label this person the suspect. As we've read in the headline news, referring back to the killing of Daunte Wright by the Minneapolis police a few months back. So what occurred to me was this being a large motivation for cops to feel the need to question someone who they believe fits a certain profile. There needs to be some initiative to remove that direction of interactions between the police and the public. That way, the police are only dealing with people in a protect and serve response. Because that creates a mosh pit of problems that didn't need to be solved right then and there. So that's the end of my story there.
Thank you, Andrew. Really appreciate you being able to share that story.
Sorry, I was just reading something. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you, Andrew. So that sets a really important context for what we're going to be talking about tonight. So the point of this evening is for us to get this process started. And what I wanted to share again is talking a little bit about where we're going from here and what the process is going to look like. And so tonight, we're going to discuss a little bit about the proposed process. First off is we want to be able to share with everyone the idea behind what we're doing over the next 6 months. First is a purpose of this particular group is to identify and advance concrete alternatives to policing, community interventions, and police reform accountability policies to make our community safer. And there are 3 goals that we have aligned as we developed a community proposal for a community-led process. That number 1, we want to center the community voice of those impacted by police and the criminal justice system. 2, develop a shared understanding of the challenges that we face. And then 3, develop and advance policy and budget recommendations. So these are things that we want to be able to do together as part of a community, as part of a process. So the idea behind this is that for roughly the next 6 months, we're going to meet every other Wednesday. And we're going to alternate between evening meetings, 6:30 to 8 p.m. and morning meetings, 8 to 9:30 a.m. to give ourselves some time to be able to learn together and being able to communicate with our constituents, those folks who are here representing that we talked about in the breakout groups. The next component of this that I wanted to share is the idea of actually having the meetings themselves would be organized in not a dissimilar way from what we're talking about this evening. Number 1 is having a little bit of connection time so we get to know each other. The second is to have a lived experience testimony. We were able to hear from Andrew's experience, this evening and some of what he shared, so the aspirations for what we can be doing differently. And it's a good way of grounding ourselves in terms of the work that is happening moving forward. The next part would be having learning presentations that we're able to develop a community perspective and share some data and research that exists locally and in other ways, and then talk about what are some of those solutions, what those solutions could look like. And then as we get deeper into the process with some committees that we'd like to share a little bit about this evening, we will do some committee reports that will be part of these regular conversations, leading us to towards the latter end of the process, really honing in on some concrete recommendations as that we'll be developing at a subcommittee level. And each meeting will include a segment for public input and then some potential for discussion time if we want to be able to do so towards the end of the meeting, where we can dig in and process and discuss things together. So that's the idea, the proposal for what the meetings could look like. And as we think about presentation topics, these learning presentations, what one proposal that we might be able to look at is understanding the context, taking some time over the next several weeks and months to learn about the context, policing and differential enforcement, understanding what are alternatives to the way that we actually do policing in our community, and really dig in on elements around police reform and accountability. So those are some things that we'd like to dig deep in terms of context, and also looking at our physical environment, kind of things that we do, how we lay out our spaces and how we patrol some of the physical environment. So thinking about things like traffic enforcement and other types of things that are part of how we operate as a community and as a society. And then we also want to dig into the actual experiences of various constituencies. So, for example, the Black community experience and what it means to have that experience here. If you're unhoused, if you experience mental illness, if you have disabilities or different abilities, the LGBTQIA plus experience of immigrants, digging deep into a conversation around intimate partner violence and what happens there. And then ultimately, and we'll talk more about this later, is the experience of youth. And youth are going to have a very special role in this process, which we'll discuss a little bit later. So that is the context around what we're discussing. And last but not least, the proposed process includes expectations of members. These were articulated in the proposal that was adopted by the City Council, but just to be a little bit more clear about what is really expected of each of us in this process is to, number one, understand the context and support the goals of this process. This is not coming out of nowhere. This is coming out of an international Fed uprising to challenges that we've seen with the way that policing works in our society. And knowing that our situation in San Jose is unique and different than other parts of the community, but we're connected with the larger set of systems. And for us to be able to take the time to learn together about that. So the second expectation is show up, participate, be part of this effort. The next thing is, it's an expectation for all of us based on the goals of this particular process is to really be grounded in the lived experience of the constituencies that we represent. For us to be very clear about what those constituencies look like and be present with them. So connect with and representing our constituents is a really important goal. And the last couple of priorities that we wanted to ask of folks, expectations of members, is to join one of the committees. And that is a really important component of what we're able to do, where a lot of the deep dive development of ideas and proposals can come from. And another expectation is to help us plan a session. So these are these working sessions. They will be facilitated, like I am tonight, by one of you to be able to help out and do this. So these ideas around policing, differential enforcement, alternatives, police reform, these experiences of different constituencies, that would be really, really useful and important. After tonight's session, there will be we will be sending out a survey to ask people if you'd like to help participate in that process, and in helping to which committees you might be interested in participating in, and we would formalize those at our next meeting, and then helping to plan sessions, and then talking and learning more about how we're able to help plan the agendas for these meetings. So there'll be a request for that. So that is what we're talking about in terms of the proposed process. So I wanted to open up the floor for a few minutes to see if people have questions about the process. But again, this is not dictating how everything's going to go, but this is just a proposal. So. Any questions that people may have?
Yes, Poncho, this is Paul Soto.
Yep.
I would, my comment is restricted to acknowledging the Chicano community. I think that the Chicano community, considering that Sophie Mendoza, Ernestina Garcia, and the CAPS program back in the 1960s and 70s really set the mark on what it is for a community to come together and start challenging the context in which we live, that we were being brutalized and we were being dehumanized by the department and by a segment of the department, not all of them, but a segment of the police department. And so I would respectfully submit to you that in these documents, that we start acknowledging the Chicano community as a particular constituency that has a stake in this in these conversations. I, for one, am connected to that community. I'm a descendant of that community, and I represent that community to the fullest of my capacity within these groups. So I would appreciate that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Very much appreciate that. Any other questions? All right.
I had one question about the committees. This is Reverend Sammy Evans. So you said that you would invite people to serve on a committee. Did you list those committees? Did I miss that? And what would the meetings of those look like?
We'll be talking about that at it'll be if you look on your agenda, it's like the penultimate agenda item.
Okay, so you're gonna kind of list those out and talk about that. Okay.
Exactly.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks, Reverend Evans. All right. So with that, I think we're going to move on to the next. So we're going to move on to the next part of the agenda. So what we're going to share now is part of our learning conversation this evening is to share a little bit of research that members of this committee and others have done to actually help us understand what are some of the learnings from other cities. There have been reimagining processes in other parts of the country, and we're going to share a little bit about that. But before we do so, I just want to give, these are a couple of the highlights, things that we want to be conscious of as we think about the work from other communities. And we're going to be talking about the experiences of 4 different cities. But before we do so, I just want to give a couple of highlights. So some key learnings. Number one, what we've heard from other cities, that community leadership and investment to build the support of our political leadership is absolutely essential. Number two, understanding the history, structures, effectiveness, and expectations placed on law enforcement is a very important role that we have to dive into. A third is that solutions exist, but oftentimes they are underfunded. So it doesn't necessarily take us coming up with brand new things. But this is something that has been uncovered in other communities. It's important to have committees that have a special focus. So Pastor Evans, you were sharing, like there are some proposals for some committees that we will ratify next time. But the hope is for us to kind of learn and explore from that. And then the other element is it's really helpful for these processes to have a concrete commitments to change. Having the will of political leadership to be committed to actually doing so is a really, really important ingredient. There's also some potential landmines in these processes. When no real changes happen, it can really deflate the energy that comes from the community to see something happen. Second is that if there isn't a concrete change to the narrative about what and why we're doing so, it becomes really hard to be able to get into that. And we will talk in future sessions about what does narrative mean and what does narrative shift mean for us to be able to understand that. Another thing for us to understand from a landmine perspective, we won't make everyone happy. This is not going to be something that everyone is going to be thrilled with every step of the process, but it's okay for us to get our hands dirty and really try to learn from each other during this process. And then the other thing that can be a potential landmine, and I think it was related to the success factor of these things, is a lack of understanding the actual role of law enforcement. The kind of responsibilities that we place on law enforcement sometimes are ones that our society places too much burden on that to actually address things. So that's an important landmine for us to be able to understand. So what we're going to do over the next 15 minutes or so is talk a little bit about and share a little bit of research that's been done about the experiences in other communities and just some highlights from those programs. So first up is the city of Oakland. So let's who's going to take this one?
I'll take it.
All right.
Thanks, Macho.
And why don't you introduce yourself, Chris, to the group?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Logan. I am the organizing manager at Sacred Hearts for Racial Equity, organizing manager for Racial Equity, and excited about this process. I don't want to, belabor you with too much of the details of Oakland, but just to kind of give you some highlights. What we learned through our study of what they did is that it takes a community to run the task force, and it needs political pressure to run it. As Pancho said, people are not aware of all of the roles and responsibilities that we put on policing, as well as the goals, the contracts, and the bureaucracy that exists. And so we want to be able, as they were, to engage experts to make clear the data of what police do and what they handle. We have assembled a broad-based coalition, as we've learned from Oakland. Appointments are critical, and people needed to be committed to actively redistributing funds. Oakland made a very, very strong commitment to redistributing funds. And then public education is really, really key to this process, particularly around the connection of policing and crime rates. So in other words, more cops doesn't necessarily mean that there's less crime. Next slide. So a couple of policy highlights. I encourage you all to read the stuff that's online about the process, but they have a mental health alternative to police. It's called MH First, responding to mental health crises and psychiatric emergencies. There's also a crisis response service that should support people through quality follow-up and ongoing care. They have something called Macro, which is a countywide thing that they implemented so that people can call a number with those who don't think that it requires a police response, it requires a non-police supporters response. They can actually call that number. And so that's a really strong commitment that they made, along with many others. But that's just one I want to highlight. Next slide. And then lastly, I just want to say that, again, they made a strong commitment to repurposing their city funds. They reinvested, I believe it was $18 million in community funds into mental health crisis response and violence prevention. They also had task force co-chairs. This is just process thing, but task force co-chairs, two co-facilitators, and a representative from the city administrator's office formed the steering committee responsible for the task force processes. And the steering committee created a task force meeting agenda and made decisions on any issues that arose. And that's Oakland.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to talk a little about the experience of our friends in Austin, Texas. So, some key learnings from Austin included that there was a big organizing group called Communities of Color United, the Coalition for Racial Justice that had been working for years. It's all volunteer grassroots coalition that began with redistricting in Austin and created an opportunity to affect the city budget, which also related to law enforcement. They actually pushed for the creation of a racial equity office and were able to decrease the growth of the police budget over time. But they did have some challenges in actually creating success of redirecting resources. So that was one of the things that they found. When they helped create the reimagining process, a public safety task force, funds were set aside of the police budget, which was to be decided upon by a separate process. So one key policy highlight from that was some work that was done on patrol and surveillance working group. Basically, they phased out neighborhood-based policing line item in the Austin Police Department budget, and then it was really around understanding about how driving around looking for criminals is based on a system of surveillance and control enforcement through threat of violence, and it wasn't something that was considered to be a very useful or effective tool. So a couple other process highlights that I want to mention that helped create a really effective grounding in this was that the task force included community partners across issues such as youth incarceration, immigration, cultural organizations, queer and people of color organizations. So it was really very much of the community. They had 4 working groups: reimagining 911 and non-police crisis response, police staffing, public health reinvestment, equity reinvestment in community. So a lot of things around prevention and other things that really guided that process. And so there's more information. We will include these slide deck and send it out to the group and post it, for folks to be able to see this later on. So you don't have to worry about taking notes or screenshots. We will definitely share those in the group, including the links associated with this. So Portland, Liz Finney.
That's me. Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Finney. I'm the social justice manager at Sacred Heart. I'm one of the staff co-organizers for the Race Equity Community Safety Committee called REX. So to talk about Portland, in November, the city presented a report that talks about how a lot of Portland's officers don't have skills trainings that people are asking for, right? They're not trained in crowd management or de-escalation. They are not trained in minimizing the use of force, right? And so in July of this year, so just a couple of days ago, honestly, the Portland City Council unanimously approved a police oversight commission of 20 people to sort of keep track of what was going on in the police department. Next slide, please. They also, as a policy highlight, did something that a lot of cities and counties are doing, which is a non-police alternative response for 911 calls of a certain kind, right? So for folks who are unhoused or people experiencing behavioral or mental health crises, there's an alternate number that they can call that doesn't send out an armed officer to respond to those calls. And that's, I think, something we're doing in Santa Clara, right? They're running a pilot program for that, yeah. And then they also reallocated money from the police budget by cutting a bunch of different programs, including vacancies. A lot of police departments, you'll hear this over and over again, have a hard time keeping staff. They're thinly staffed, they're understaffed, they have all these vacancies. And so the Portland city moved money out of some spaces like that to into these sort of like community programs. And the last one is the process highlight. So this is the Police Oversight Commission analyst. And this will be the person that works with the committee the oversight committee. So they will be working with the public and working with internal and external stakeholders. So I think that's all I got.
Thank you so much, Liz. We're going to go over to Derek, who's going to share a little bit about Minneapolis.
Hey, y'all. So Minneapolis, what a wonderful place. So you can go
Hey,
to
Derek, introduce yourself, man.
My name's Derek. My pronouns are he, they, and I am an organizer with Sacred Heart for REX, which stands for Race, Equity, and Community Safety. And I'm happy to be here with y'all to talk a little bit about what was happening in Minneapolis over the last year. So one of the big things is, after the murder of George Floyd, there was a large focus placed on Minneapolis. But I think it's important to note that Minneapolis in particular has had a long history of trying to address public safety in alternative ways. And that's largely due to a high volume of officer-involved shootings and various other social problems that are happening there in their city. But the big three highlights to take away from what I'm about to tell you a little bit in depth of is that it was a community-led process, much like this one that we're starting. And there was a report that was presented to the Minneapolis City Council, which was like over 100 pages long. And it included things like interviews from various community members and community workers who were closest to the problems and solutions of public safety. And there was also a history of the Minneapolis Police Department, which was helpful in understanding the role of police in that city and how it evolved over time. And then finally, there was just a lot of other organizations that were local and were working on these issues for a long time and engaged with the community consistently. And if you go to the next slide there, you can see some of the policy highlights. I won't get too deep here, but they reallocated a lot of money from the Minneapolis Police Department to enhance funding for 7 different public safety programs, departments, and initiatives, many of which are part of the Office of Violence Prevention. And next slide, please. And again, this was just a really exhaustive process that included local organizers, researchers, artists, and activists to shift the discussion in Minneapolis around police and policing, to talk more about structural change rather than just procedural reforms. And there's a lot of these orgs listed here, but there was strong coalition there. And there was a holistic timeline and history of the police department. So that's kind of the short version. And if you're interested in learning more, you can look up MPD 150. I'll post the website in the chat. But that's all I've got for you tonight. Thanks for listening.
Great, thank you, Derek. Really appreciate your work, and thanks for the research from our team as we're looking at different models. I also included in the email that I sent out to folks, and we will include this as part of this document, some other resources about the success factors in other cities and communities. And again, some of the learnings from these reimagining processes is really that community leadership, coalitions of different sorts coming together, being able to make sure that we're listening to people in our communities. We want to understanding like the history and context of the role of law enforcement, and that the solutions really do exist. They're already here, but oftentimes they're dramatically underfunded. So if we have committees that are working on developing a really specific focus and then developing concrete commitments to change, those are some of the really important success factors as we look moving forward. So what I'm going to click to right now is we're going to have a brief. I would love to be able to open it up for public questions or comments about what we've learned thus far. We don't have all the answers to it, but this is just if people have any quick questions or reflections on this particular element. So and feel free to raise your hands so we can kind of do that in order if anyone would like to ask a question about what they've heard thus far. All right. Well, what we're going to do now is we are going to jump back into talking about committees. And so the next part of our agenda, we're just going to discuss and lay out a little bit about what are these committees. So committee formation. So tonight we're not going to be formalizing or formulating committees. What we're going to be doing is actually talking about a proposal, proposed ideas for four different committees that are going to get to work. And one of them is already been formalized as part of our proposal, which is called a youth council. And I'll talk about that at the end. But the first one I want to discuss is alternatives to policing. One of the models is talking about a differential types of enforcement, sometimes including different ways of responding to crisis situations in our community. And so the idea of a committee is that's called alternatives to policing would be what can we do to send out different types of folks addressing situations when there already is a crisis at hand. And so that might include like the CAHOOTS model that's out of Oregon, which we are going to be piloting later on this year in Santa Clara County with the leadership of the Behavioral Health Contractors Association and support from a large coalition of organizations that's been able to develop something. We'll be talking about that process and what went into that at our next meeting. So that will be part of the discussion, probably next meeting or the following meeting. We'll talk a little bit about what that looks like, but there are other ways of responding to issues and situations when it comes to a situation that's already manifested. For example, folks that are unhoused, and who should be responding to that? Should that be law enforcement? Should that be another set of responders? And so the idea of this committee is when there's already a situation at hand, how do we want to respond? The second committee, I want to ask Darcy Green to share a little about the idea of prevention.
Thank you, Poncho. The second committee, prevention, is going to focus on exploring the root causes of crime and violence in our community and looking at models that choose to invest in eliminating those root causes of crime, really looking at a system of public safety and justice that is focused on creating just social and economic conditions within our city and our county as a way to prevent crime and ultimately prevent the need for policing and this punitive system of justice that we currently have.
Thank you, Darcy. And the third committee is around police accountability and reform. And I was going to ask Mika Estramera to share a little bit about what that committee might be tackling.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Poncho. Police accountability and reform would ultimately be defined by the members of the subcommittee, but the focuses will likely be recognizing the history of abuses, training directly targeting bias, use of force, obviously accountability and transparency that is linked to that accountability, recognizing negative policy incentives, and then of course, recommendations regarding increasing hiring standards and data tracking for what is considered less serious police contacts and arrests. Thanks, Poncho.
Thank you, Mika. And the last, and if you get a chance to read the proposal itself, there was a decision made and ratified by the City Council to support this. The idea of creating a youth council, which is a autonomous space within this process where youth members of our community and with a certain number, there are some certain number of organizations that are nominating, folks to actually serve on that, but also potentially other youth to be able to be part of a process where they're able to look at the conditions and impacts of systems on them, and not just looking at it through the prism of challenges that they face or that the community faces because of the experiences of youth, but also looking at the assets of youth and how youth can be part of the solution. And so they are going to be working collectively over the next few months, talking to other youth, being able to surface ideas and concerns that they have, reaching out to schools and other events and fairs and collecting data and information, coming up and organizing a town hall, and then being able to bring ideas and solutions that they would like to see happen first back to our group, and they will also be making their own presentation to the City Council at the end of this process. So that is the Youth Council. So those are the committees, and that's pretty much what we were going to talk a little bit about today. Like in this evening's meeting, we want to open it up for questions and public comment. Again, these committees are not formalized and set in stone, like Mika said. Like the committee itself will be, each of these committees will be working on developing some of these ideas further. But more importantly, wanted to try to make sure that we're able to open that up and let you know that at the end of this process, the end of this evening, we will be sending out, not the end of the process, but later on this evening, we'll be sending out a survey to members of the committee to see which of these committees you may want to participate in, and if you would like to be part of helping to organize one of these issue forums, to be leading some of these conversations for our own collective learning. And last but not least, if you'd like to be part of helping to design the agenda, to be part of an agenda setting committee. At this meeting, we're not going to be formalizing a steering committee as of yet. We will do so probably in the next few meetings. Organizing that will be helping to guide some of these conversations in different ways and making sure that we're able to set that up for members of the committee. And also we'll be talking in future meetings about ways in which we can be doing outreach and consulting with our constituents. So that was our agenda for this evening. So wanted to open it up for questions that people may have about what you've heard this evening, ideas. So feel free to raise your hand. I see, first hand I saw was Gabrielle. And then I see another couple of hands raised.
Hi
Gabrielle.
there. Hi there, everyone. I contacted behavioral health about, the program of having them on the street to sort of help police with people with mental health issues. Now, we are on the Alameda and we see a lot of stuff going on, but it happens late at night. And a lot of it looks like mental health, is mixed in with substance use. And they said, well, the mental health people will be there during the day, but most of it happens late at night. And so it could be a program that is built to fail if it isn't in the right time frame, if you know what I mean. It's a difficult situation because that's when everything seems to happen is later at night. So obviously that may be a committee I may want to join. But I just want to point that out, you know what I mean? And mental health workers have to have substance use, training, I think, because that's also a big part of what's going on out on the street that the police have been dealing with, sometimes well and sometimes not so good.
Thank you, Gabrielle. So I'm going to go to Alina.
Hello, thank you. I also posted in the chat, but I was just wondering, I didn't see this meeting posted anywhere in the city's website, and I was wondering if the recording, will it also be like on the city's YouTube channel, or where will the contents of these meetings live?
Yes, it will be on the website, and the video from this will be posted later on. So we'll be able to get those going, and we will have minutes. And we're going to set up some kind of a shared drive to be able to share minutes, agendas, and other resources materials for both the public and members of the committee to be able to access. Lori.
Yeah, so I have two questions. First, I want to address the mental health, the county mental health program. Now, I've been one of the families impacted who's been working with them, and it was our stories that I believe helped push in the necessity of having a response team without police. And we are talking about the drug use, the homeless. We have all aspects of that we have talked about, and how we as a community can educate others in our community, and the 3 pilot programs, so there's a lot more that people who haven't been on that, those committees like working to get this passed, we are doing it. Like the families impacted, we're hitting it from all angles, because our families lost somebody to police violence because they weren't properly trained in mental health. They didn't do escalation training. They're not adequately trained to be empathetic and understanding to our community who's hurting. So therefore, they come out with the response that they're powerful and they want to kill you, and that's the end of it, and nobody has nothing to say. So that is not the kind of response we need when people are in need of help. So give it a chance. Don't knock it, because City of San Jose didn't want to do this. They want to keep police on their response, but the county agreed that this is what we need. So let's just pray that the county will show the City of San Jose this is the way we have to go, and we got to reinvest in our communities. Another thing was the youth advisory. Now, I know it's kids, like how old do the kids have to be? There's a lot of kids in our community who have been impacted, who are fatherless because of police, and their voices need to be heard because their voices are ignored. They're growing up. My son's going to be in middle school now, and his school knows, and we have teachers who are doing social justice there. But I think that everybody wants to understand the impact of police and what we put on them. They chose their jobs. I'm sorry, they chose it. We didn't choose to be where we are. So people need to understand the trauma in the aftermath of police violence and how the impact is so negative on our children, and that nothing in our system is there to support these children from healing. There's not a support system for them. They are ignored by our city leaders, and that is not right, because then when they go to school, they're going to be fed to that school to prison pipeline because the kids are hurting. They have traumas that aren't being recognized and not being supported. So that youth advisory, if kids that have been impacted by police violence, either directly or indirectly, that their voices also be allowed to be on this advisory group, not just certain kids, because I think the ones that are impacted growing up for the rest of their lives with nobody and supposed to see police as role models, they're not the role models to these kids. I know my sons, they're the monsters that have been haunting his dream for the past 8 years. So it's very important that the community understand the impact. And if anybody wants to learn more about it, I'll be glad to share some of what Josiah's gone through, and some of the other families who can share their stories of what our children go through. And then they'll see the importance of stop investing in police and invest in healing these kids so they don't grow up broken men in our system, wasting tax dollars to have them in a system that's going to make them even worse by having them locked up. So I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. And just to, I know Chris put this in the chat. It's like the requirements are to be 21 years of age or younger was one of the requirements. And the other thing is that that committee will determine for itself how it wants to be able to have participation from the community, from youth. And so I think they're very open and excited to be able to working on that. Latoya Fernandez is going to be working to help facilitate that group over the next 6 months. And so I'll make sure that she gets in contact with you and with others about what that process looks like. So there is already a working group of a handful of young people that are going to be part of that process, but I know they're excited to reach out to more young people. So Sandra.
Hi. So question about the Youth Council. Will they be looking at the SROs and the school to prison pipeline, or are they just looking at city policing?
I think they will determine that, but we'll definitely make sure that issue is something that is brought up. In fact, there's one of the committee, one of the folks that is, or one of the organizations that's going to be nominating to that particular group includes the San Jose Unified Equity Coalition, which has been looking at SRO, that issue within San Jose Unified, and also working with students from other districts as well. So we're excited to have some leaders from Somos Mayfair, including some of the youth leadership that's going to be there represented on both this committee and also the youth committee, our youth council. So, and I know that's been one of the issues they've been working on. So I imagine it'll be an area of focus.
Okay, wonderful. And second question, will there be a youth with disabilities on that commission or on that council?
There definitely could be. And like I said, they will be self-selecting how they want to incorporate, different voices and youth, but definitely that recommendation can be made.
Thank you.
Okay. Kiana, speaking of youth council involvement.
Hello. Yes, so I just wanted to say, thank you for everyone being here, the public and other committee members. I'm really looking forward to working on this commission and being a part of these conversations. And I just wanted to say that to me, it's incredibly important that we don't let this fail like it did last time. It's so important that these meetings are as inclusive as possible. And we as a collective, we come together and we make it happen, because we have a limited time to discuss these things and to work on these topics. So I just wanted to say I'm ready to get the ground running, and it's nice to meet everyone.
Okay. Thank you, Kiana. And maybe as one of the folks that's going to be involved in the youth council, it would be great if you could help convey some of the energy and focus that's come from these the feedback from this evening. So, all right. So Paul, you're next.
Thank you, Poncho. I do want to acknowledge the Lori and the citizens that have lost their life as a result of the officer's approach and just the complete lack of ability for the institutions that are designed to protect us and what is actually happening within the citizenry. And that's why it's so critically important. And that's why I said the Chicano community has to be inserted in these documents as a constituency, because there is a lack of understanding about the history of the Black Berets, why they formed, what was happening in San Jose, specifically with the Chicano community in the 1960s and 70s. What was going on? Does anybody know Danny Trevino? Does anybody know, who these families are, who these community leaders back then? Why did they need to do that? Why were they going around San Jose with walkie-talkies, and watching the police on par with the Panthers? They were doing the exact same thing that the Panthers were doing right here in San Jose. What are the reasons why? And so those questions need to be asked, because that virus, because it's an infection, it's a cancer within the department, was never healed. It was never excised. It was never lanced out of there so that it could heal. It's still there. SB 1421 has never been implemented. That hasn't been talked about. SB 1421 was implemented by the will of the people as a vote. 2 years later, nothing. And so the only reason why this happened, we have these meetings now, was not because of the loss of the Chicanos or the loss of the people that were mentally ill. The reason why we're having these is because of Eddie Garcia's failure to keep his rank and file in check. And as a result of his failure and the response towards the community, that's why we're having these meetings. Okay, and so we really need to get person-centered, really need to get centered with what has happened with the Chicano community and what the legacy is in terms of the relationship with the police department, so that can be healed. It needs to be reckoned, it needs to be reckoned, it needs to be rectified, it needs to be reconciled, and needs to be reparated if need be. But those 4 elements need to exist in this process, or else the process won't heal. The community won't heal. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Very much appreciate your words. Reverend Pinkston.
Thank you. I have a question, but first let me say I was late joining the meeting, and please forgive me for my tardiness. This seems to be round 2 of police reimagining and accountability. What happened with round 1? Was that group completely dissolved? What happened with round 1?
That's a really good question, Steve. I think what we can say is that that process took a little while to get off the ground. There was some members of the committee that felt it was a little confused in terms of its approach and the scope. And there was a movement on the part of a number of members of the committee to say that this didn't feel like it was going to be moving us in the right direction. Therefore, the need to actually reconstitute itself and do so in a different way, led by the community rather than being, led through a process with the administration was doing. But I think there were a lot of different perspectives there, and some of it was starting off with the best of intentions. But one of the main challenges or changes that came is to expand the scope from not just looking at alternatives to law enforcement or that piece, which was part of that process, but it didn't include the mandate to actually work on looking at police reform and accountability. So it needed to change and come back, and the decision was made with the support of the administration and the city council to empower this process to take place. So we feel excited, and the responsibility is now on all of our shoulders. Kiana.
Thanks.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kiana. I am with the African American Community Service Agency. I'm a student intern, former community worker. My question is, I was just wondering if there are any grants that this is being reported back to, just as far as numbers or things that we're going to be speaking on. Is there any grants that this is being reported back to?
Right now, no, there aren't any particular things, but one of the things that we're going to be seeking is there is a commitment on the part of the city council to help support this process. And I think they've allocated roughly 100,000, maybe 125,000 to a process that could be used to hire a consultant or pay for other types of needs. And so that there's an investment there. And there's a potential to reach out for other funders and to actually help support the process. So the community engagement process of reaching out to our constituencies, if we're doing surveys or focus group work, being able to help with things like interpretation services or other types of things, or outreach or forums or things like that to support the facilitation of the youth council, et cetera. Those are things that we are talking to potential non-government funders to also help support this process in different ways. And if we do so, we'll make sure that we communicate that in terms of what the expectations and outcomes are for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kiana. Any other questions or comments from the public about what we heard tonight? Well, with that, I wanted to just, again, offer my sincere appreciation for people being able to come together so quickly and to be part of this process. It's good to see not only the members of the committee, but also our advisory member capacity. So we have a number of folks in a number of different organizations that are also represented on this in a non-voting advisory capacity. So it's good to see, folks like Chief Mata and Dr. Armelin, from San Jose State. I saw our Siobhan is here, the independent police auditor for the city, and others are able to participate in this process in different capacities. I know that, I think David Epps as well. And so we're excited to actually have folks participating in this process, and we're going to be talking and working with you over the next 6 months to help develop what we feel will be a really important set of recommendations and proposals that can be actionable. And that's something we're looking forward to. I appreciate everyone's time and attention to this evening. Again, a reminder, the next meeting will be on August the 18th, I believe, and we're going to be doing that at 8 a.m. in the morning. I'll be sending out a different link for the morning sessions that they're going to take place. And I think we're going to have Dr. Armelin is going to actually help us lead that particular session. So with that, I want to thank everyone for your time and attention to this matter. And we are going to close this first meeting, but welcome to the Reimagining Public Safety Community Advisory Committee, as I like to say, RIPS. All right. Thank you so much. Be safe, be well, and we will see you in a couple of weeks.